Hey guys, Phil here, and this is part 2 of my WordPress plugin connecting to a Ruby on Rails GraphQL backend series. How's that for SEO optimization? Last time, if you remember, we created a Ruby on Rails kind of API backend that runs on GraphQL or supports GraphQL and lets you create a user, create an access token for that user, and then make a request out to another function on the back end that will create a block of content using ChatGPT. Or if you look at my other videos, you could switch it to be using Olama or any other LLM, whatever. So that's what we did last time. This time, what we're going to do is make a WordPress plugin that connects out to that Ruby on Rails backend and lets you, from a kind of single click, give the backend the topic and it will create the text using ChatGPT and create you a post inside of your WordPress. All done and dusted, single button. So that's what we're going to look at today. This is probably the first time I've ever done a programming tutorial that's not been Ruby on Rails. This one's going to be in PHP. I am by no means a PHP expert or WordPress plugin expert. I'm just doing what I think works for me in this case. There you go. By the way, the source code is going to be available $5 on Gumroad. And let's get comfortable, get ourselves a coffee. I have a coffee here. And let's get started. Tasty. So I've got my backend running already, but that's not relevant. I just did that so you could see it. What we're going to do, we're in a directory here. We're going to make a new directory called WordPress connector plugin. And we're going to open that directory. Well, let's touch WordPress connector plugin WP connector.php. Let's just do that for the sake of speed. And Code Insider's WP connector plugin. Let's open this thing. There it is. So we have a completely blank file, as you would expect. It says I've got GitHub Copilot installed. I also have the, there's a WordPress extension installed. Is there? I think so. Got some kind of PHP, WordPress, PHP IntelliFence installed so that I don't get warnings for all the WordPress things. But I've got Copilot installed, so why don't we just get Copilot to do this? You know, I mean, not do this whole thing, but just kind of get us going. So let's start a WordPress plugin called WP Connector, written by Phil of, let's see, I've not done this. This is philspy.com. Let's see what happens. So really all it needs to do is generate this header, which is super important. This is where WordPress gets all the information to show, you know, on that WordPress plugins page. So this plugin connects to a Ruby on Rails backend to create an AI-generated post or page. That's nice. And you can do other things in here. You've got the version. You can say requires at least 5.2, and that's WordPress 5.2, and tested up to, I think we're running 6.5 or something like that. We'll see in a minute. And requires PHP. None of this is really important. It's just looks cool. And text domain. I'm not even sure what that is. There we go. So we can add our functions below, and it's got my name and everything. Yeah. Again, let's get this to do it. Let's create a menu for the WP connector plugin, and a single main page. So that'll create just this stuff. And while we're at it, add a submenu for the settings page of the WP connector plugin. Does that do enough? Yeah. So we've got a couple of stubs here. They don't do anything really. What it will do is put in the left-hand side an entry that says WP connector. It's very important that you set a number here. That's kind of the menu position. I always just do 99. You can do even greater than 99. And then a submenu, because we're going to have the settings page, because first thing we need to do is be able to log in. Because if you remember back to the previous video, this Ruby on Rails backend requires you to be an authenticated user and have an access token to be able to generate the AI content. And that's so in the future you can charge people for it. So let's create a form in the, not render settings, I wonder why. So these, let's just quickly go through. This is a bit of a how to make a WordPress plugin tutorial, I guess, as well. So these things are what's going to show up in the text. And then this is the slug. It's a bit annoying that it didn't normally put comments in there, but the slug and, the icon and the menu position. And the submenu has to be inside of this parent. So this is add menu page, this is add submenu page. So this is the parent, here it is, WP connector. Render main page is the function, and render settings page. So this will have a slug of WP settings, and it'll render this, render. I don't know why I don't like that. Oh, I see. No, they did render main page, render setting page. Fair enough. So let's add in some content, and yes, I'm just going to paste it in because you guys have seen me type, and life is too short for that. So I'm going to create, no, that's in the wrong place. We're doing a settings page first because we need to log in. That's the very first thing we need to do. So we're going to fill out this render settings page, and what we're going to just put a title there, and we're going to create a form. Pretty simple form that's got an email and the password and a submit button that says register user. And then on the bottom half of the page, it'll have a section where you can see your access token. So the way that the access token gets in is here. We're going to be pulling it out of the database. So we will be saving our access token automatically to the database when the person registers with the backend. So, and then, no, that's all we need to do there. Let's get this up onto the server. So I decided to just use one of my umpteen WordPress installations that I've got. And we're just going to bump it into here. So the first thing we need to do is create a zip file. So let's just make a zip. So zip minus VR, just verbosity and recursive. We're going to create a zip called WordPress connector plugin, and we're going to do that out of the WordPress connector plugin directory. And so we've got that. And then we install it. So plugins, installed plugins. Oops, I guess I could have. Add new plugin, upload plugin, choose file. And here's the zip file that we just created. And we're going to install it. And we're going to activate it. And now down here, we have WP Connector. And you see it's got the two things, a little menu, and we can go to the settings and see our form. We're flying. So from now on, we could upload our plugin every time we make a change, but because that's rather tedious, I'm going to edit my code locally so that I have a local copy, and then I'm just going to paste it in on my server. Don't tell anybody you saw me do this because it's very lazy. So we need to go and the other thing I want to talk about just for 1 second, because we're developing this plugin, of course, we're going to have issues and we're going to need to look at log files and everything. So what you should do is edit your WP config, and here, add these values in. WP debug true, debug log true, debug display false, display errors 0. These two things say we want to write debug messages, and this says we want to write them to the log, and this says we don't want to put them on the screen, and this one says don't put them on the screen, I think. So you will need to have a file. I think it's in WP content. Yeah, this file called debug log. And you probably don't have it. And I found that it didn't create it correctly. So I'm going to show you how to create this file. You'll do a sudo touch to make sure the file is there. And then we will go and get my stupid password. Yeah, typo. It's content. So that touch will create the file if it's not there already. Just gonna fix that. And my notes for you. And then when you do a touch, because you're doing sudo, it will be root. So you need to change the ownership. So you would do something like this: chown, user and group of data, WP content debug log. So mine's already set, but I just wanted to show you. And yeah, good to go. I'm just going to zero out that log. Like this. Oh, come on. Huh? Oh, whatever. Okay, fine. Let's remove the file. Content debug log, and let's just go through. Touch it. And so you can see it there. Root. And own it. Great. So we already added the plugin. So what we can do, sudo vi wp content plugins, WP connector, plugin, WP connector PHP. So there's our PHP file. So from now on, what I'll do is edit locally and paste it in there. So this, in and of itself, of course, doesn't do anything. Of course, it doesn't, it doesn't go off. It doesn't do anything because we didn't write any code to do that. It's just a cyclical, submits to itself. So let's have this thing submit. And we're going to be doing this using Ajax. So that's what all the cool kids use. So we need a new file in here for our JavaScript. And then we need to tell WordPress that we have a JavaScript file. And so we do that by function WP connector enqueue scripts. And poor Copilot tries to write a thing for that. So this tells WordPress that we have something called WordPress connector script, and it is in this file, and we need jQuery. And then we need to do an add action. So whenever WordPress itself calls admin enqueue scripts, we will hook into that, and then our method will be called, function will be called, and we will register it. The way that WordPress works is everything is based on hooks, and hooks and listeners, really. So WordPress, when it fires up, or probably when it makes any call, does these series of calls like admin enqueue scripts, and that hooks into, gives us as a plugin a chance to hook into it. Same kind of thing we do here, add action. So whenever WordPress calls admin menu, we call this function, which puts our menu in there. And by calling add menu page, and the same kind of thing, whenever admin menu is called, we add a sub menu and so on. So that's kind of the way the WordPress works. Everything is kind of hooks and ladders, as I would say incorrectly. So now we know that our WP connector JS is going to be called. So what happens? What's going to happen in WP connector JS? Well, we have this form here, the registration form. And what we want to do is when somebody submits, we need to talk to our backend and call that, create, what did I call it? Create or retrieve type thing, user create, where we pass in the input of the email and the password, and we'll get back the access token. So how does that all work inside of WordPress? Like I said, this is a little bit of a WordPress plugin tutorial, so I'm going to explain it because it is totally different, especially if you're coming from a Ruby on Rails background. We need to do 2 steps. We're going to have the form, and you're going to click on this, and we're going to use jQuery to capture that form submit. And then we're going to build up an Ajax query, but we're not sending that Ajax query back to our server. We're going to send it back to WordPress to its admin Ajax method, admin ajax.php, and it will delegate off to another method that we're going to write, and that will go and connect back to our server. We do this so that we use the WordPress users and permissions and all that other good stuff. So how do we do it? All right, we've got the ID. And so we can do a jQuery document, jQuery document when it's ready. We're going to do a function, and let's end that so it's clear. Make sure you have this little $sign in there, because that means that inside of this function, we can then use the $short code for jQuery. So the very first thing we want to do, we need to get our ID. And what we're going to do is when this thing is submitted, that's it. First thing we want to do is prevent the default. So we don't want the form to submit anymore, because when you notice, as you notice here, when I type, it submits. Oh, too clever for your own good, aren't you? It submits to itself. So first of all, we want to stop that. And then let's grab the email out of the form, and I didn't set an ID. And here I could have done that, but we can also just do this, which is input a name. We can use a selector. I'm never sure we should have double quotes on the outside, but inside. So let's do double quotes on the outside. So we're going to say grab from input connector name WP connector email. We're going to grab the value, and that'll be our email. And then from the WP connector password, we're going to grab our password. So now we have our two values. Then, like I say, we're submitting to itself, to WordPress again. var. So let's create a structure to send back to ourselves. Email, password is password. We don't need those quotes there. And we also want to know what's going to happen. So let's call register user. And you'll see in a second what I'm doing here. And then we're going to pass in something called a nonce. Anyway, I'm not going to elaborate on that, but there's something called a nonce. And that's kind of like a secret key to make sure that, we're not being hijacked or whatever. And now we're going to call Ajax. So let's just close that off. So what are we going to do? We're going to call the URL, the Ajax URL that we're going to pass in. I'm going to go back and show you how this works in a second. And it's a post, right? And we're going to pass the data. This will be pretty familiar to you if you've ever done, things in Stimulus or whatever. And now when we success, we'll do a function log. And when we error, we'll do a console log. And maybe we'll do something. Let's do an alert. User registered successfully. And instead of doing a console, we'll do both. Alert, user registration failed. So that's pretty much it. There's just this. Where do these things come from? Nonce and the Ajax URL. And what we can do in that little hook here, this enqueue script, we can say localize script. So when things are called, when that script is called, we're going to set up a global, dirty word, going to set up a global for that JavaScript function. And we're going to pass in the WordPress admin URL for admin Ajax PHP. And we're going to create a nonce. And so the way that this works, everything is a little bit secret sauce with PHP. So if we set it up like this, we're saying here's our variable, for want of whatever, global namespace. So it's called WP connector. So inside of an Ajax call, it is called WP connector _ Ajax. How you're supposed to, I guess because but it's not totally clear to me. But anyway, so it's called WP connector Ajax, and we can grab, this is an object, and then we can grab the nonce. This is here's the object, and we can grab the Ajax URL that we passed in. So that's where we're getting the values from. So now let's go back to our server. First of all, let's update the PHP. And then we need to put in the JavaScript. Here we go. And let's inspect. I had a heck of a time getting this thing to work right. Eat all of this because we could hide that. I'm not sure how we could, but let's refresh the page. And then we should at least see if everything's loaded. Okay, it looks like it's loaded. And now test. And if we register user, we can see. Oh. We're back after a short break when I realized I'm stupid and that I did my selector wrong. Of course, I've got an ID to be a stupid thing there. Hash. I told you, my biggest flaw is typing. Okay, let's do this again. Refresh the page. Test. There. Register user. Registration form submitted. Ajax is not defined. So I've made another typo and it's .ajax. Let's fix that. Very frustrated with myself. Story of my life. Fix that. All right, let's run it again, just to show you that I know what I'm talking about. There it is. Form submitted. User registration failed. Here's our response. Of course, user registration failed because I'm wondering if we got anything in the debug log. No, we did not. For some reason, yeah, didn't get anything in the debug log, but it failed because we haven't written the thing in the PHP. So we've gone off. Now we need to write something called WP connector register user. So let's copy that. And then we go back to our PHP file. Function register user. And what are we going to do? Well, first of all, let's use that stupid error log and call registering the user. And we're going to check the Ajax refer. No, not comment. What is going on here? Check Ajax refer to make sure that the nonce we've passed all the way through is correct. And then let's grab the email out. So we're posting that form again, right? Here's the form data. We're posting again. We've got email and password. I know it seems cyclical, but that's, and whatever, but that's the way that WordPress works, the best way. So we've got that. So now we need to create the GraphQL query. Remember this one, create or retrieve. We're going to call it user create. We do that. So we need to turn this over to our PHP. And we're going to do some funky stuff with variables. So we've got that. So create, let's fix that. Create or retrieve. So we're going to create or retrieve a user. And we're going to pass in an email and a password. And that inside this function, if you want to call it that, is mutation. We're saying call the user create method inside of GraphQL with the user input. This is all from the previous video. Email and password, and return us the ID and the API access ID. Personally, probably shouldn't return the ID. And then we can do this with variables and create these variables. Pass these variables in. So that's how you do variable substitution. And there it is. Now what we need to do is send it over to our server. Now the problem is our server here running on localhost, my WordPress is out in the internet. So what we need to do is run, what I do is run ngrok. If you don't know what ngrok is, highly recommend it. It kind of gives a virtual domain for you out there. And so we now have wp-connector.ngrok.io points out on the World Wide Web to our localhost. So we could replace this. And you'll see if we get back to our local. So that means we can use this domain from the outside world. So let's do that. Should I type it? We've seen that's dangerous for me before, so I'm going to copy and paste it. So we're going to make a remote post using the WordPress built-in functionality of doing this. So again, we don't have to use anything like, fetch or whatever. We're going to use WordPress's libraries to do all of this. That way we remain as compliant as possible. We're going to call out to the WP connector ngrok.io URL. And notice that we call GraphQL, not GraphEQL or IQL. GraphIQ or GraphEQL, or however you want to say it, is for getting this sandbox front end. The real GraphQL URL is that, GraphQL. And we're going to say, hey, we're passing in the application JSON type, and our body is going to be JSON encoding of this query. And we're going to post to you, and our data format is the body. And our server will then respond, and we can tell, again, because we're using WordPress functions, we can tell if it's an error. And if it's an error, we say, oh God, we got an error, something like that. And we write to the error log, but hopefully we don't get an error. Of course, we get some kind of success, and then we can retrieve the body of our response. We can decode it because we're going to be getting JSON back. And we can say, I don't like all this. We can write to the error log that we got the response. And then if there's too much stuff, stupid, I really don't like, come on, man, Copilot, because it's wrong a lot of the time. And then what we're going to do is, if in that data set, we have data user create user, probably that means they're okay, we're going to send that JSON user create back. So that will go back to this call. And then we can say console log response. So we'll see it in the console. And otherwise, everything got messed up. And it's possible that we will come here if our server returns an error of 200, a response of 200, which means everything went okay, but your user wasn't registered. We need to send an error back to our AJAX call. So we need to not only just say send JSON error, we need to pass some kind of error code. Otherwise, WordPress in its wisdom says, okay, send back an error, but I got a 200, so everything's really fine. So if you don't send back an error number, you're not going to actually see that there was an error. So that's where we're at with the PHP. Let's go back to our server. And where are you? There you are. Go up to the top. Delete everything. There's our updated stuff. I'm not sure if we changed the JavaScript. I was doing so much talking, so we'll just go up to the top and delete it anyway. So now we're up to date, and now we're hoping to see something in the log file. Let's refresh. And let's, first of all, call with the wrong password. I'm just doing ASD, register the user. User registration failed. Did we get hit on the back end? No, we did not. Did we get something in the debug file? No, we did not. So what happened? You know what I was saying about callbacks? Well, first of all, we need to put at the end of this die so that we gracefully exit. I don't know why die was chosen. So we need, of course, to add an Ajax listener. We need to add really two of them. I'm going to copy and paste these, excuse me, because they're quite long lines. We need to add two things. So we need to add a hook. And again, this is secret sauce. In WordPress, you need to add a WP Ajax to the front of your call. And then in WP Ajax, no priv. So it's kind of like if a public not logged in person, we don't really need this, but I'm going to put it in anyway. So we need those two lines. Well, and the die. So let's just replace that. Worst tutorial ever, right? There we go. So now we've got those two lines in there. Now everything should be okay. Let's refresh. Test, incorrect password. And now we can see we got a response. So we hit our PHP method, invalid username or password. If we go and look at our server, we can see that we got a hit on create or retrieve, and I sent the wrong password. So bad or no data returned from GraphQL API. And that's this, bad or no data returned from GraphQL API. Great. So now we've got the error case working. Let's try and get the success case to work. So what we need to do, what are we going to do if we're successful? In the plugin, not in life in general. So what we want to do here is save the access token to the database, right? And we can do that in a kind of a two-step process. First of all, we're going to create a register for our data. So that means inside the database, we're going to create a register, and we're going to call that the WP connector settings group. And we only need something called an access token. So this says we're going to create a register of settings containing that. That's just polite. And again, we have a callback. So when, I should have put that below, shouldn't I? So when admin init gets called, we're going to register our settings. So now we can grab the access token out of the response because we know it's here. And then we can update the option. Update option means write into the WordPress database or the WordPress register the WP access connector access token of type access token. And I believe we used this earlier. So if we look up at the top of the file, here, we said get option and write it into this little thing here. So it says your access token will appear here. So if we log in properly, it'll show there. Now, because we're doing things with Ajax, we're not actually refreshing the page. So what we need to do in our Ajax callback is also write it. And we will do that by, as we saw here, where is it? When we're good, we send a response. I think we probably want to do that after. We send the data back, right? The JSON data back to our Ajax caller. So that means in here, we have it. We saw that somewhere. So what we can do inside of console log, we can now update this thing, which is an input, and we can update the value to be the access token that we got back. This is just a visual thing. So that's one of the reasons you're separating out JavaScript and PHP. The JavaScript is just a visual thing. The PHP is the thing that actually is writing it into the database. So let's give it a shot. First, let's update the JavaScript. So we've got the input. We're going to just update the thing there. Update that visual element. And now we will add this stuff, which was getting the access token and updating the option and setting the register and all that. We'll do that in the PHP. Delete. Tail the log just in case. Refresh the page so we get all the goodness. And now, if I can remember, probably it's Phil Spy 123. We're going to log in and I'm going to go over, so I'm going to just zero out the screen for that as well. And register the user. Oh my gosh, user registered successfully. There is our access token written. You can see we got the data here, data, user, and there's the access token. If we look, this is our server. We can see we got a request to GraphQL. And this is our debug log. We can see registered user, and we got a nice response from GraphQL. So, hallelujah. That took about an hour, I think, because I'm talking a lot, I guess. But that to create that. We haven't even called the ChatGPT stuff. So let's get on with it. All right. We've done the settings page. We have an access token. So now let's create the page that actually does this thing. So here's my page. I'm going to copy and paste this in and show it to you guys. Get long. Refresh. So we have an access. See, we've refreshed the page. The access token is still there. It's in the database. Let's go to the main page of WP Connector. And here's a form that I've got. WP Connector, create a post with AI, type in some keywords, choose your page template, choose the status, and choose whether it's a post or a page, and then click Create Post. Great. So it's just a form, pretty normal stuff. We don't need an action. I don't know what that's doing there. We're going to call it WP Connector form, and we don't need the nonce field. Doesn't hurt. So we've got a form table with all the inputs. I'm grabbing all of the templates out of WordPress, page templates, That'll be all the page templates for the current theme in WordPress. And then we iterate over those and put them into that drop down here. And if we don't have any templates, I disable the button. We can also disable a button if there is no access token. And then just a regular radio button for the status, radio button for the post type, and then a submit button. And if it should be disabled, we disable it. So we should also do is disabled. And then if there's no access token. Probably going to do this wrong. Yeah, we don't stack. So PHP already. Empty. Good option. So if there's no thingy, disable. Otherwise, we leave it as it was. So it will also be disabled if there's no token. Get option to access token. Disabled, otherwise is disabled. Oh, wrong. That's not it. It's there. There. Not quite sure what the problem is there. Good option. So that's fine. And we've got that. And so we need to do the same thing. We're submitting another form. We can go a bit faster here. I won't talk as much, I hope. We're doing the exact same thing. We have a form. We click submit. We grab it. We grab the submit inside of jQuery. We create another Ajax request. We post that to the WordPress admin Ajax. That goes off, talks to our backend. We wrap everything back, and we're good to go. So I'm going to copy and paste this in. Sorry, folks. Could you imagine how long we'd be here if I typed this? So we've got the WP connector form, which is the ID of the form, WP connector form. I've done it correctly this time. Prevent the default. Again, build up the form data. We're doing all the same thing. Grab all the stuff off of the form. You need to use checked here because of the way jQuery works. I found that out the hard way. Otherwise, it just returns the first one. Hopeless. And grab from a select, we get the page template, use the nonce, and we're going to use an action of WP connector create post, which we will create in the PHP in a minute. And the submit button. So when we click submit, we're going to disable the submit button. And we're going to change its value to processing. You could do some kind of cool spinner or whatever, because, it takes a while to talk to ChatGPT. Same shenanigans. WP connector Ajax, Ajax URL, post, form data, and we're going to do stuff on the success, and this is what happens if we fail. Leave that for a second. Let's go over, what was it I need to do? I need to create something called the connector create post. So let's go down, function. Right, so that's it. And let's not forget to put those things at the bottom. Actually, we need to have to have a die. And let's start it. Error log. Always like to log my stuff here. Check the Ajax refer again to make sure I've got the right nonce. Now, we can do all this stuff. I'm just going to grab all this stuff out here, because this is all just standard. So we know we've got the correct request. So let's grab the post type, the post status, the keywords, put them into variables. Let's create that GraphQL mutation. You're all good to go, right? This should work. We could do a response, same kind of thing. Where's I can copy and paste it. Response. We call out to our Ajax method. And you know what? This isn't going to work. And you know why it's not going to work? Because we spent all that time last time making sure the user was authenticated. Remember that? So if we don't tell the server who we are by using an access token, it will reject it and say you need to be logged in. So what do? We've already got a content type header here. So we need to put an array. So we need author. That's it there, right there. It might have done this right. We are going to put a header in called authorization. And remember that header starts with the word bearer and a space and then the access token. And we're going to grab that access token out of the database. You can do it like this, but we also probably should check it and not get that far. So right after we check the nonce, let's grab the access token and say if it's empty, like what the hell, the access token is required. We're going to log that and we're going to die with access token is required. So we have this already. So rather than do another call to the database, let's just do that. What are you doing? Why don't you delete that? There we go. So I hope you understand what I'm talking about. I know I'm going a bit fast, but I've taken so long to do the other stuff. So if we get an error, same kind of thing. We got an error calling GraphQL. Now, what do? So we've gone off. We've connected. One thing we need to do here, because as I said, timeout takes a very long time. So I strongly recommend you set a timeout of 300 on this call and hope that you get back from ChatGPT in time. So we've got a successful thing here. So let's grab the data. Retrieve the body, parse out the data, write it to the log file. And then we're going to say if it's set, if our magic data is set, else, if it's not, we got an error back, really. So this part is, we've got everything. Everything's set. Now, if we just quickly do this in GraphQL here. See, you must be logged in. There's my access token. Let's set some headers here. Authorization bearer. God, is there anything in the world I hate more than Grammarly? And the answer is no. No. So now, create content. It's going off. I just want to show you the content that's coming back here. ChatGPT. There it is. So this is the content that comes back. And you see I've got title here. A step-by-step guide on how to antique a desk and a couple of line returns and then the content. So what I could have done is in the backend, I could have split that out. There's other videos I've got about how you could have done that. But I didn't do that. I don't want to go back and change the backend at this point. So let's parse it out. So once we have our successful response here, let's grab the content. So we're going to grab the content out, magic content create, magic content content. And then we're going to pull out the title by grabbing everything up to the first carriage return. And then I'm going to get rid of that stupid word title in there. And then we should be left with a nice cool string. And we're going to then get the content. We're going to take this title that we've pulled out and trim that off. And then what we're going to do is create a page or a post. So we'll use the title that we just pulled out. The content of the page or post will be the content that we just got back from ChatGPT. The post status will be the post status that we pass in. Post type is the post type, so it could be a page or a post. And the author will be the current user. See, this is the advantage of doing everything using the built-in WordPress stuff. And we should get back a page ID. And if the page ID is not 0, and we have a page template, because you can't set the page template when you create the post, God knows why. Anyway, so if we have a page template passed in, which we probably should, we will update the post metadata to say, hey, use that page template. And then we'll do another check. If the page ID is greater than 0, not 0, we will say, here's the URL for that to edit that page and send that back. Otherwise, we'll say, oh, something went wrong. So what we're finally sending back is a piece of JSON or JSON called edit page URL with the edit page URL. And that's why here in my success, I say, if we have success, if we have an edit page URL, let's redirect to the edit page URL. You got it? Let's do it. Oh my gosh, please don't make me enter my password. Thank you. All right, so let's put in all that JavaScript. And now, let's go up to 1. Let's put in all that PHP. Stick around for a minute. I'm going to give you a bonus tip. Let's tail our debug. Let's tail our server. Let's refresh. Let's just check we have our settings. Yeah, we still have our access token. Let's go back here and then let's create a story. How to write a short story. We're going to use a full width template and we're going to make a page. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. Damn. WP connector Ajax is not defined. Where is that? That's there. Nonce. WP connector Ajax. Had to be something. WP connector Ajax. Oh, right. Oh, I see. That's what I did. WP cont. See, we can reuse the same one. So it should be WP connector Ajax, WP connector Ajax, WP connector Ajax. That must have been a holdover. Let's update the JavaScript. Sorry about that. Sometimes, I tried different things and that must have been held over. Let's do that again. Console. How to write a short story, full width template, and make a page. Create. It's going off. It's saying processing. That's a good sign. It's got the keywords of how to write a short story. You can see my backend server has been called create content with the keywords of how to write a short story. The only thing we can hope and pray is that it comes back within 300 milliseconds, which it should. That's Be a long time. And that's what I'm saying. I've got processing. You could do something a bit more fancy with a loader or a spinner or whatever. It's taking its sweet time, as we know. One little thing I want to do after this, but otherwise we should be done. This should work. If ChatGPT returns, ChatGPT seems to be incredibly so. Oh my gosh, there it is. Look at that. It redirected. There's the post number. Here's our content. I'm going to close this because we don't need to see that. There's our content. We have created a page using our plugin, using ChatGPT. How cool is that? And if we go over, because I published it, we can actually go, and there's the page. And you see, it's got the full width template. Everything we set is there. It's got me as the author. We didn't set a featured image or anything like that, but there it is, nicely done, and one great big block of text. How cool is that? So the one other little thing I want to do, I don't know what that is, so let's delete. The one other thing I want to do is, to be nice, when we clean up, we should have an uninstalled.php. Because we're creating something in a database, did I write that? No, I did not. Incredible. There we go. Uninstall PHP. And what we'll do is just write a little bit of PHP. So when WordPress uninstalls a plugin, it will call this callback. If your plugin has an uninstall.php, it will call it. And what we can do is delete our option of that out of the options table. So that's nice. And that's it. We are done. And we have gone through some pretty cool stuff here, and I think, and I hope you like it. I hope you can find it useful. I hope you write more WordPress plugins and write more Ruby on Rails GraphQL. Like, subscribe, bell notification. The source code is going to be available over on Gumroad for $5. And I think that's it. I'm just going to check my stuff. By the way, I'm going to be in Detroit in May 7, 8, 9 at the RailsConf 2024, my first ever Rails conference I've gone to in my life. So if you're there, if you see me, say hello. Bye for now.